Life always teaches us in unexpected ways. If this story made you think, subscribe for more lessons like this.
Welcome to Tale Grove, where every story hides a lesson. Listen closely, feel it, and discover the truth behind today's story. The dining room was glowing with warm lights and expensive decorations, but the air around the table felt strangely cold. Crystal glasses clinked softly as Daniel's relatives laughed and shared stories, enjoying what looked like a perfect family dinner. At the end of the long table sat Amara, quiet and composed, her hands resting gently in her lap. She listened politely, though she had barely spoken all evening. Across from her, Daniel leaned back in his chair, his expression distant and impatient. Suddenly, he reached into his jacket and pulled out a thin folder, placing it on the table with a sharp sound that made several people stop talking. "Amara," Daniel said firmly, sliding the papers toward her, "it's time we end this marriage." The room fell silent. Forks stopped moving. His mother slowly lifted her head, a small satisfied smile appearing on her face. Amara blinked once, looking down at the documents in front of her.
Finally.
Divorce papers.
Move forward now.
Daniel's father cleared his throat. "This is for the best," he said coldly. "Our family has tolerated this situation long enough." One of Daniel's cousins leaned closer, whispering loudly enough for everyone to hear. "Honestly, we all knew this would happen eventually." Amara's fingers trembled slightly as she touched the edge of the paper. Around the table, several relatives exchanged amused glances, as if they were watching an uncomfortable show unfold. Daniel crossed his arms. "Just sign them," he said impatiently. "Let's not make this dramatic." His mother added with a soft but sharp voice, "You should be grateful our family even accepted you this long." For a moment, Amara didn't speak. She simply looked around the table, at the faces watching her with judgment, impatience, and quiet cruelty. Inside her chest, a storm of emotions swirled, but on the outside she remained calm. "So this is how it ends," she thought quietly. A cousin chuckled under his breath. She probably thought she could stay in this family forever. Daniel pushed a pen toward her. "Sign it, Amara. There's nothing left to discuss." The silence grew heavier as everyone waited. But none of them noticed the brief, almost unreadable look in Amara's eyes, a calm, steady confidence that didn't belong to someone who had just lost everything. Because while they believed they were forcing a powerless woman out of their family, none of them had the slightest idea who Amara truly was. From the very first day Amara entered Daniel's family home, she could feel the quiet judgment that followed her everywhere. The house itself was enormous, marble floors, golden lights, expensive paintings, but somehow Amara always felt small inside it. Daniel's mother often watched her with a sharp, measuring gaze, as if she were studying a mistake that had somehow slipped into their perfect family. One evening, during another formal dinner, Daniel's mother placed her fork down and sighed loudly. "I still don't understand how my son ended up with someone so ordinary." The words hung in the air like smoke. Amara lowered her eyes politely, pretending to focus on her plate. Daniel's father leaned back in his chair, his voice calm but cold. "Daniel could have married into a powerful family. Someone who could actually help our business." Across the table, Daniel shifted slightly, avoiding Amara's eyes. He didn't defend her. He rarely did anymore. His mother continued, shaking her head. "You barely talk about your work, Amara. What exactly do you even do all day?" Amara forced a small smile. "I work on some business projects." "Business projects," his mother repeated with a short laugh. "That sounds vague." Daniel's father smirked. "Probably something small. A hobby, maybe." The room filled with quiet amusement. Inside, Amara felt the familiar sting of humiliation, but she remained silent. She had learned long ago that arguing would only make things worse. Let them believe what they want, she told herself. Daniel suddenly spoke, though his voice lacked conviction. "Amara prefers to keep things private." His mother waved a dismissive hand. "Privacy usually means there's nothing important to say." For a moment, Daniel glanced at Amara, as if he wanted to say something more. But the moment passed quickly, and he looked back down at his phone. That silence hurt more than the insults. Amara remembered the early days of their marriage, when Daniel used to defend her. Back then, he admired her quiet confidence. But over time, surrounded by his family's constant criticism, even Daniel had begun to doubt her. The truth was, none of them had ever really tried to understand her. They saw her simple clothes, her calm personality, her refusal to brag about success, and they decided she was insignificant. What they didn't know was that the quiet woman they mocked so easily held a secret powerful enough to shake their entire world. But for now, Amara simply sat there in silence, letting them underestimate her. Because sometimes, the most powerful position is the one where no one sees your true strength coming. The next morning, the city was already alive with traffic, flashing lights, and the constant movement of people rushing to work. In the heart of the business district stood a tall glass tower that reflected the rising sun across the skyline. Inside the building, dozens of employees moved quickly through the halls, whispering about an important executive meeting that had suddenly been scheduled. At the top floor of the building, a large conference room waited in complete silence. Several senior executives sat around a long polished table, reviewing documents and financial reports. They spoke quietly among themselves, clearly nervous. One of them adjusted his tie. "Is she really coming today?" Another nodded carefully. "Yes. The owner will attend the meeting personally." Just then, the conference room door opened. Amara stepped inside. But she looked completely different from the quiet woman they had seen at family dinners. She wore a sharp black suit, her posture confident and calm. Her eyes were focused, and every step she took carried quiet authority. The entire room instantly stood up. "Good morning, madam," one executive said respectfully. Amara gave a small nod as she walked to the head of the table. Her assistant, Maya, followed closely behind with a tablet in her hands. "Good morning, everyone," Amara said calmly, placing her folder on the table. Her voice was gentle, but there was no mistaking the power behind it. Maya began organizing the documents. "The quarterly reports are ready," she said softly. "And the board is waiting for your decision regarding the investment partnership." Amara sat down slowly, scanning the numbers in front of her. Outside of this room, very few people knew the truth. Amara wasn't just a businesswoman. She was the founder and secret owner of Hartwell Global, one of the most influential companies in the city. Her company controlled investments across technology, transportation, and infrastructure. Entire businesses survived because of the funding her company provided. Including one very familiar company. Daniel's family business. An executive cleared his throat nervously. "Madam, the Harper Group has requested additional financial support." Amara paused for a moment. Harper Group. Daniel's family company. She remembered the cold dinner table, the dismissive voices, the quiet humiliation she faced every week. But her expression remained calm. "How much do they need?" she asked. "About $100 million to stabilize their operations." The room waited silently for her response. Amara leaned back slightly in her chair, thinking. Then she spoke quietly. "Approve the investment." The executives exchanged surprised glances. Maya looked at her carefully. "Are you sure?" Amara nodded once. "Yes," she said softly. Then she added, almost to herself. "Sometimes people reveal their true character when they believe they hold all the power." None of the executives understood the deeper meaning behind her words. But Amara did. Because very soon, the people who treated her like she was nothing would learn exactly who they had been disrespecting all along. The atmosphere inside the Harper Group headquarters felt heavy that morning. The once busy office floors were quieter than usual, and even the employees seemed tense as they moved through the hallways. Rumors had been spreading for weeks, rumors about falling profits, broken contracts, and investors losing confidence in the company. Inside the main boardroom, Daniel sat beside his father at the long conference table, staring at a stack of financial reports that seemed worse with every page he turned. Several business partners sat across from them, their expressions serious. "This situation is getting worse," one partner said firmly, sliding another report across the table. If we don't stabilize our finances soon, the company could collapse within months. Daniel rubbed his temples, feeling the pressure build in his chest. Just a year ago, the Harper Group had been thriving. Now everything felt like it was slowly slipping out of their control. His father leaned forward, his voice tight with frustration. We've already cut costs. We've reduced staff. What more do you expect us to do? The partner sighed. We need stronger investors. Without new funding, this company won't survive the year. Daniel's mind raced as he looked at the numbers. Debt was growing. Projects were stalling. Every option seemed to lead to another dead end. Just as the tension in the room began to rise, another partner spoke up. There may still be one solution. Everyone turned to look at him. What solution? Mr. Harper asked sharply. The man cleared his throat. A private investment group recently agreed to support us. Daniel blinked in surprise. An investor? Yes, the partner replied. A very powerful one. The room instantly grew quieter. How much are we talking about? Daniel asked carefully. $100 million. Even Mr. Harper's expression changed at that number. That kind of funding could save the company, Daniel said, disbelief in his voice. The partner nodded. Exactly. The funds have already been approved. Mr. Harper leaned back slowly, relief washing across his face. Finally, some good news. But there's something unusual about the investor, the partner added. Daniel frowned. Unusual how? They prefer to remain completely anonymous. The room fell silent again. No meetings? Daniel asked. None. No negotiations? None. Mr. Harper crossed his arms thoughtfully. Why would someone invest that much money without even meeting us? The partner shrugged. All they asked was for a small monthly return. Only $1,000. Daniel looked up in confusion. 1,000? That's it, the partner confirmed. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Mr. Harper chuckled slightly. Whoever this investor is, they clearly believe in our company. Daniel nodded slowly, though a strange feeling lingered in his chest. He had no idea who this mysterious investor was. But the truth was far more surprising than anything he could imagine. Because the person who had just saved the Harper Group from financial disaster was the very woman they had been humiliating at their dinner table every single week. The dining hall sparkled with fine crystal and polished silverware, but the atmosphere was anything but warm. Candlelight flickered over the faces of Daniel's family, illuminating smug smiles and eyes sharp with judgment. Amara sat at the head of the table, poised and calm on the outside, but inside, her heart raced with tension. She had anticipated tonight would be difficult. Daniel had made no secret of his parents' displeasure, but she could never have imagined the cruelty that awaited her. Daniel's mother, Mrs. Harper, leaned forward with a thin smile that barely concealed contempt. Amara, dear, she said, her voice dripping with false sweetness, we've gathered tonight for a simple family tradition. Since you're clearly struggling to manage your responsibilities as a wife, perhaps it's best we discuss your future. Amara's jaw tightened. Her fingers clenched around the napkin in front of her, betraying the storm inside her calm demeanor. She forced herself to meet Mrs. Harper's gaze. I am doing my best, she said quietly, trying to mask the tremor in her voice. Daniel, sitting beside her, avoided her eyes. He had always been torn between his loyalty to his family and the love he had once claimed for Amara, but tonight, he seemed a mere shadow of the man she had married. Then came the moment she had dreaded, the envelope, crisp and white, slid across the polished table by her mother-in-law's hand. Amara's eyes widened as she saw the words printed on the paper, divorce papers. A collective gasp from some of the relatives punctuated the silence, while others smirked, their eyes dancing with cruel amusement. Please, don't make a scene, Daniel muttered under his breath, but it was too late. The whispers around the table had grown into quiet laughter, a soft symphony of judgment that pierced Amara's composure. She felt the weight of their mockery settle like stones on her chest, each chuckle a reminder of how little they valued her. But beneath the humiliate, a spark of defiance ignited. This dinner, this display of power and cruelty, would not break her. While her family-in-law reveled in their imagined victory, Amara's mind raced, calculating, planning. Little did they know, the very woman they sought to diminish held the key to their survival, one that could turn their world upside down. As the room continued to murmur and glance between each other, Amara forced a polite smile, placing her hands neatly on the table. "Thank you for your concern," she said, her voice steady, betraying none of the triumph that was quietly blooming in her heart. Tonight, they thought they had won, but the game was far from over, and the next move would shock them all. Key phrases for storytelling: calm on the outside, storm inside, weight of their mockery, spark of defiance, key to their survival. After the humiliating dinner, the room still hummed with quiet murmurs of satisfaction from Daniel's family, each member convinced they had asserted control over Amara's life. But she remained seated with her back straight and her chin raised, radiating a serene strength that unsettled even the most confident critics around the table. The envelope of divorce papers sat in front of her like a symbol of their triumph, yet Amara's mind was anything but defeated. She had spent months preparing for this moment, and tonight would not break her. It would reveal her power in ways they could never imagine. She glanced at Daniel, whose eyes flickered nervously between his mother and the woman he thought he knew. "Amara, please," he whispered, his voice a mixture of pleading and guilt. She met his gaze calmly, her expression unreadable. In that quiet moment, she saw not the man she had loved blindly, but someone trapped between loyalty and ignorance, a pawn in a game he barely understood. Amara's fingers traced the edges of the envelope, and she allowed a slow, deliberate exhale to escape her. "Daniel," she said softly, yet firmly, "you think signing these papers will solve anything? You think this humiliation changes who I am?" Her voice carried a quiet authority that silenced the whispers in the room. Even her mother-in-law's smug smile faltered for a heartbeat. She leaned forward, placing the envelope neatly on the table. "I will not sign these papers tonight, nor will I ever be forced into a decision that diminishes my worth," she continued. Her words were calm, but they carried the weight of a storm hidden beneath the surface. Around her, the family stiffened, unsure how to respond to a woman who refused to be intimidated. Inside, Amara's thoughts raced. She had built a life, a company, a power structure that none of them suspected. The very people who had mocked her, who had laughed at her supposed weakness, had no idea that their fate rested in her hands. Tonight, she would remain composed, but every move she had made, every decision she would make, was already set to turn the tables. The room's tension was almost tangible. Daniel swallowed, his voice barely audible. "Amara." "I don't," he trailed off, realizing he could no longer command her compliance. Amara simply smiled, a faint curve of her lips that held no forgiveness, only quiet inevitability. "It's not about revenge," she thought, "it's about balance, and soon they'll understand that respect is earned, not demanded." As she rose from the table with measured grace, eyes forward, the family watched in stunned silence. Calm, collected, untouchable, they had thought they controlled the night, but Amara's decision marked the beginning of a reckoning. The woman they underestimated had claimed her power not with noise or fury, but with unwavering poise. And in that moment, everyone knew, everything was about to change. Key phrases for storytelling: poised in calm defiance, storm hidden beneath the surface, respect is earned, not demanded, beginning of a reckoning. The next morning, Daniel's family arrived at Amara's house, still smug from the previous night's so-called victory, certain that her silence had cemented their triumph. But the moment they stepped into the sleek, glass-walled boardroom of Amara's company, the atmosphere shifted instantly. Executives, dressed sharply and radiating authority, stood at attention, each holding folders marked with the company's latest financial statements and legal documents. Amara entered behind them, poised as ever, her calm presence commanding more attention than any raised voice could. The family froze, sensing a power they had never before confronted. "Welcome," Amara began, her voice clear and steady, echoing softly in the room. "I suppose some of you expected weakness, compliance, or fear. But you will learn that appearances are deceiving." She gestured to the executives, who began to present charts, contracts, and sign agreements proving her ownership of the company, a business Daniel's father had once boasted about controlling. Everything you believed about this company, about who runs it, is wrong, she continued, her gaze fixed on Daniel's slack-jawed parents. I am the majority shareholder. Every decision, every profit, every future move has been mine to make. Shock rippled through the family like a wave. Daniel's mother whispered, that's impossible, she couldn't, but the data, the board's testimony, and Amara's quiet confidence left no room for denial. Daniel himself stood frozen, guilt and fear washing over him as he realized the depth of his underestimation. He had played his part in their humiliation game, unaware that he had underestimated the very woman he thought he knew. Amara. He stammered, searching for words, for some way to reclaim control, but there was none. Amara allowed a faint, almost imperceptible smile. You see, Daniel, it's never about proving you wrong. It's about truth and respect. You cannot humiliate someone whose life you never fully understood. And tonight, you all will leave knowing that power and dignity cannot be bought or forced. Her voice carried not just authority, but the moral weight of someone who had endured deceit, underestimation, and cruelty. The executive stepped forward, handing copies of documents to Daniel's stunned parents. Each page told a story of careful planning, secret maneuvers, and Amara's meticulous rise to control. The family's laughter from last night now felt absurd, almost foolish, as reality crashed down on them with undeniable force. Daniel's father clenched his fists, and Daniel looked at his wife with a mixture of awe, fear, and the painful realization that he had been blind to her true strength. Amara's inner thoughts were steady, her calm heart knowing this revelation was not revenge, it was justice. Let this be a lesson, she reflected silently, never underestimate anyone. True power is quiet, deliberate, and invisible until it strikes. As the room absorbed the truth, the family's shock deepened, and the quiet authority of Amara finally settled over them like an unshakable truth. They had laughed at her once, but now, the woman they dismissed ruled both the room and their humbled hearts. Key phrases for storytelling: shock like a wave, appearances are deceiving, power and dignity cannot be bought, lesson in true strength, meticulous rise to control. The day after the shocking revelation, Daniel's household was heavy with silence. No cheerful chatter, no clinking of cutlery, only the oppressive weight of reality that had settled over them. Amara, meanwhile, arrived at her office with a quiet sense of vindication, not gloating but fully aware that justice had finally been served. She moved through the sleek corridors, her presence a stark contrast to the chaos lingering in her in-laws' home. Behind closed doors, the executives briefed her on the company's plans. Every mismanaged project, every risky investment that Daniel's father had arrogantly approved was being corrected, and every profit was now secure under her careful guidance. Back at the family home, Daniel sat across from his father, his hands trembling slightly as he tried to find the words to reconcile with the reality they had ignored for so long. I never imagined, Daniel whispered, his voice tinged with shame and disbelief. His father, face pale and eyes hollow, remained silent for a long moment. He had spent decades building a sense of superiority, yet the tables had turned so thoroughly that even his voice seemed powerless now. We underestimated her, all of us, Daniel finally admitted, his words heavy with regret. Meanwhile, word of Amara's strategic reveal spread quickly through the city's business circles, sending ripples across social networks and news platforms. Executives and investors reached out to congratulate her not only for her business acumen but also for her resilience in the face of humiliation and deceit. In private moments, Amara allowed herself a small, quiet smile. This isn't just about money or power, she thought. It's about respect, integrity, and showing that underestimation can never defeat preparation and courage. At the family home, Daniel's parents faced a reality they could not escape. Their arrogance, their insistence on controlling others, had led to public embarrassment and private remorse. Every memory of mocking Amara, every laugh at her expense, now felt like a bitter echo of foolishness. Daniel's father finally spoke, voice heavy with self-reproach. We were wrong. Entirely wrong. And it cost us more than we imagined. Daniel nodded, a mix of sadness and enlightenment in his eyes, realizing that humility had come too late to undo the damage but just in time to teach a lesson. Amara's own reflection was serene yet firm. Justice had been served not through anger but through intelligence, calm strategy, and patience. The consequences for Daniel's family were severe. They had lost pride, faced public exposure, and witnessed the limits of their control, but they had also received a chance to learn, a rare opportunity to understand respect and truth. And for Amara, the greatest consequence was perhaps the inner peace she finally felt, knowing she had turned cruelty and underestimation into a story of triumph, wisdom, and moral victory. Key phrases for storytelling: oppressive weight of reality, tables had turned, resilience in the face of humiliation, underestimation can never defeat courage, lesson in humility and respect. As the city skyline shimmered under the setting sun, Amara stood by her office window, sipping a cup of tea and letting the quiet of the evening wash over her. The events of the past days, the humiliating dinner, the secret power she had wielded, the shock in Daniel and his family's eyes still lingered in her mind, but they no longer weighed heavily on her heart. Instead, they had become lessons etched deeply into her soul, lessons about resilience, intelligence, and the power of patience. She reflected on how easily people underestimate those they think are weaker, and how often arrogance blinds the strongest among us. They thought I was fragile, she whispered to herself, but strength isn't always loud. Sometimes it's quiet, deliberate, and unshakable. Her thoughts wandered to the journey that had brought her here. From the first day she married into a family that saw her only as an outsider, to the moment she quietly built her own empire behind the scenes, every setback had been a stepping stone. Amara's heart swelled not with pride, but with the clarity that justice and wisdom often arrive in ways no one expects. She remembered Daniel's stunned silence, the disbelief on his parents' faces, and how the city itself seemed to murmur her triumph not through revenge, but through the undeniable truth that she had been underestimated for far too long. Amara's reflection was interrupted by a soft notification on her phone. A message from her assistant, Maya, confirmed that the company's new initiatives were already bringing in success far beyond what anyone anticipated. She smiled, realizing that true empowerment was not just about winning over those who doubted her, but about creating lasting impact. Life, she thought, will always try to knock you down, but your inner strength, patience, and integrity will always lift you higher than they ever imagined. The narrator's voice softly echoed over the imagery of Amara standing tall, her gaze unwavering, in every family, every business, every society, there will be those who doubt, mock, or betray. But it is in these moments that true character is revealed. Amara's journey teaches us that resilience is quiet yet unyielding, that patience can outshine arrogance, and that respect must be earned through wisdom, not fear. Let this story remind you, strength is often hidden, but it is unstoppable when it is true. As night descended, Amara turned away from the window, her steps steady, her heart calm. She knew that the world would continue to test her, that challenges would arise, and that people would always judge too quickly, but she was ready. Empowered, confident, and serene, she carried forward not just the victories of her business or the lessons she had imposed on others, but the inner certainty that she could face anything with grace and intelligence. And in that quiet triumph, the final lesson of her journey shone brightest. True power lies in patience, integrity, and unwavering self-belief. Key phrases for storytelling: quiet, deliberate, and unshakable strength. Resilience is quiet yet unyielding. Patience outshines arrogance. Inner certainty and empowerment. True character is revealed in trials.
If this story made you think, follow for more life lessons. Tell us in the comments, and subscribe for more meaningful stories like this.